Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I am the host of this podcast, and we are your number one podcast for bringing you conversations around death, dying, and grief, and all the messiness that comes in between with some amazing guests that not only talk the talk, but they have walked the walk and found ways of doing some amazing things through the things that they've gone through. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to their YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And before I bring her up here, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. This is a live stream, so please get your questions and comments ready for my next guest. All right. Now, without further ado, guys, help me welcome my next guest, Dr. Michelle. Dr. Michelle, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Tony. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Now, before we get started, tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
My name is Dr. Michelle Peticolas, and I'm coming from, the San Francisco Bay Area, from a little town called El Cerrito, which literally means little hill. There's a little hill there. And the work, I mean, it's not even in El Cerrito, it's in Albany, but we named ourselves after that little hill.
That's all right.
That's right. That's right. So I am a complex grief and loss coach, and I, through my first 40 years of my life, I would have been the last person you would have thought of to be a grief coach, because I was totally shut down from my feelings. And which is one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about helping people to release their emotions around grief and loss.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened? There was a big, are we getting feedback? Is that me?
No, that was my phone going off. I had to put it on silent.
Okay,
on
silent.
We're good though. Yeah.
Put it in the salad bowl. Okay, so what happened was that I was shut down. I had this belief that I wasn't good enough, and I had to prove myself, and I didn't want to have any feelings because I experienced a very temporary abandonment when I was 2 years old. And it's interesting because even a short abandonment can have a huge impact when you're really young. So I went on through my life pretty much tamping down my feelings, and then when I was in my late 40s, both my parents died. First my father, and then my mother. And before she died, I came out to help her finish up business. My mother was a toy designer with my aunt, actually sold their designs to major toy companies in New York, which at that time, which we're talking the 60s and 70s, it was amazing. So we're sitting in her studio, and I'm kind of like the taskmaster daughter. She actually had 6 kids, so I'm the taskmaster daughter, and I'm going through papers, and I pick one up and I say, "Do you need this anymore?" And it was a Xerox copy of one of her designs, and she looked at it and she said, "Oh, I guess I'll never get to that project." Her words froze me. In that moment, I really got what deadline means.
Yeah.
And I was too afraid of my emotions. So instead of asking her what that was like or how that felt or engaging in a dialogue, I said, "Oh, we don't need to deal with this right now." And I cut her off. But that experience woke me up, because she was, for me, like the poster child for living your life passion. And if she had regrets, where did that leave me? I was so much of a people pleaser. I was so outwardly focused on getting the attention and love and appreciation of other people. I didn't even know what my favorite color was.
Wow.
So that was the breakthrough. And the first thing I decided to do was to make a film about death, because I was so impressed. What was this experience of having somebody significant in your life die? And it brings up all these emotions, that it kind of wakes you up. It woke me up. It woke me up to my life. Death woke me to life.
Mm.
So I decided to make a film, which turned into a 3-part documentary film series on death, grief, and death, caregiving, and grief. And in the process, I joined hospice and I started running a partner loss support group for people who had lost partners. And
Mhm.
that was what started me into working in grief and loss. But
Okay.
it felt like, duck to water. It was like, this is where I need to be.
Right. And, it's I love that you said that because I think that's how a lot of us get to where we are today, right?
Yeah.
Because I've only met maybe a handful of people that woke up and said, "This is what I want to do," right? Said I want to work in grief and things like that. And and don't get me wrong, they're really good at what they do. They're very passionate about it, right? And and then there's those of us that have come into it where we've had to go through some significant losses, right, that redefine not only the way that we look at life but the way that we have defined life as well, right? Because I think when we experience those specific or significant losses, it changes us in a lot of different ways, right? Like how we talk. You ever notice? You ever notice that now, now that you've been in this world, that normal people that come around us, we talk totally different. Like we find it normal to talk about certain things like death, dying, and grief, and they look at us like, no, I don't want to have that around me. They look at it as such as a very negative stigma,
Downer,
right?
gloomy. And people would come to me and they would say, "Don't you find it depressing?" But I don't, because my perspective on grief is it's like this doorway, this gateway to
Yeah,
life. It's
yeah,
this moment that is so transformative that it just changes your whole perspective.
it really does. It really does. And and when you can find the beauty in it, when you can find the sunrise in it, you know, it actually changes the way the world looks to us, right? Like you understand that this is a part of life. It's not something to be shied away from. It's not a conversation that, what I'm saying, that you need to just sweep under the rug. It is a conversation that we need to have. You
Absolutely.
know, and when we talk about now, before we get into the next aspect of it, explain to people that may not understand what complex grief means.
Of course, of course. So the difference between a regular grief, whatever that is, and complex grief is that it has a history.
Mm,
Typically, it's some kind of experience of abandonment in early childhood.
right.
It could be a short abandonment. I think my abandonment was maybe all of 3 or 4 months. My father was transferred to Japan, and it terminated the sweet, loving relationship that we had developed. And
Hmm.
that wasn't his fault. I just stopped trusting him, and I decided, oh, I need to I need to get control of this because I
Right.
don't feel in control. So I'm going to control it by giving you what you want. And then I know that I will get what I want.
Mm,
It worked for a long time.
right. Right.
So other people I've known, sometimes they have some sort of illness or health issue when they're
Mhm.
children and they're put in these incubator. They were put in isolation for a while, totally traumatized, little tiny babies. It's just really traumatic. And in fact, the London Journal of Pediatric Care did a review of the literature. They studied the all the research that was done around children that did not get sufficient nurturing and affection when they were children,
Mhm.
and they it had a huge impact on both their mental and emotional development.
Mm. As you were saying that, I was thinking about, you know, I was thinking about some of the people that I know, right? That don't feel comfortable around people, or, you know, a lot of people like myself, they expect people to leave. right? You know what I'm saying? Like we understand that it's not a long-term thing, and so we've come to the realization that, you know, that people are going to leave us and we've become okay with that, right?
But sometimes what we do instead of completely opening and surrendering to the relationship is
Mhm.
we kind of box our little hearts up and protect them
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because when we remember that grief when we were like an infant and we remember it on a cellular level because we don't really at 2 years old my cognitive functioning was not very highly formed that we're afraid we're afraid to get um, we're afraid to get hurt. So it actually takes work, uh, healing, to be able to feel comfortable to really embrace a relationship and be fully there and present. And there are a lot of little behaviors that we learn, especially in childhood, because children, they want to survive and they are really a lot smarter than you think. They will
Oh
figure
yeah.
out what it is they need to survive. And what I figured out was that if I were pleasing, if I gave my parents, if I gave my school teachers what they wanted, I would get attention and I would get appreciation and acknowledgement. Not
Mm.
exactly love, but the next best thing.
That's very true. That's very true. And I started thinking as you were saying that because I'm I've seen this a lot of times where I don't think people are aware of it, but they will. And well, I'm not going to say they're not aware of it, but I've watched people intentionally do things to get attention, whether if it's negative or good, right? You know what I'm saying? And I've had men and women both tell me because I used to. I'm gonna share an experience with you, and tell me what you think about this. But I had a friend of mine, and they would always do things like, say, for instance, if their kids were getting attention, right, and they wasn't getting that attention, they would go out of their way to get that attention, to take it away from their children or their significant other or those they had to get that attention from people, right? You know what I'm saying? To make everything about them. And to be honest, it used to really get me upset when people did that because I had a ex friend of mine, and I told him, I said, man, if you're willing to do that to your children, what else are you willing to do to get that attention that you need? He goes, well, they're getting all the attention that I want. And I said, no, that's not okay. That's
Mm,
not okay.
mm.
And listening to you, and over a period of time, I understood where he was coming from, right? But did it make it right? No, right? Because I'm share this incident. There was an incident or a situation where his kids was getting an award, and they couldn't even enjoy that award because he had to make it about himself.
About him, yes, and that's so sad. And what he does it has is a choice to go
Yeah,
and heal that, and not take it away from his kids. But I understand that. That was my family growing up. There were 6 kids, and my parents, we were all fighting to get the little increments of love that we could possibly get.
right,
My parents had it worse than we did. My mother had a mother who was totally shut down. She had an alcoholic father, and there would be weeks where nobody would speak. My father, at the age of 10, his mother and his oldest brother drove to Texas and never returned. His mother died on the way, and he never saw her again. There was no closure, there was no discussion. So that's pretty traumatic, right? So there was a certain amount of that everybody was in deficit, and so we're all like competing like crazy
right.
because there isn't enough because nobody is the parent, nobody is. Uh, and here's the thing, Tony, in order to give love, you have to have love.
Yes,
And
yes.
if you're running on empty, you can't give it. Now, I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction, but one of the places I know to get love is spirit, is connecting or creativity, but connecting to who I really am
Right.
and doing things that I love to do. And that feeds my spirit. And that is actually connecting to this bigger love, this divine love. And when I connect with that, then I have plenty to give other people.
Hmm. I like that because as you were speaking, I was looking at the state of the world that we're in today, right? And all of the grief that we're experiencing or others are experiencing, and this is where I feel that we that are in this field that we're called to be right here on the front lines. Is it overwhelming? Yes, it can be, right? Because I think we're all are going through some sort of shift, you know,
Oh, yes, big
sort of
time.
shift, right? And some are starting to find themselves in situations to where they're very energized in this state of the world, and others are feeling very drained, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, and I think here's where it gets really complicated for some people because I honestly believe that so many people get so used to seeing us being a strong person or the strong people in their lives that they too forget when to pull back on us, right? And I get it, but we don't want to be like this 24 hours a day, right?
Right.
There's sometimes where, and to be honest with you, Dr. Michelle, there's sometimes where I have to cut it off, right?
Yes.
I have to cut it off. And people never understand that. Like there's people, oh, I've been reaching out to you. I'm like, well, I had to take some time to myself.
Yeah.
And they go, well, I needed you. Okay, I needed me too,
Yeah.
right? But when it happens on a day-to-day basis, like I very seldom experience burnout. Very seldom. I very seldom experience a drain. You know what I'm saying? Where I'm tired, where I'm weak. Like right now, there's been a lot of things going on, and I'm finding myself, what I'm saying, having to put up a protective bubble around me from
Hmm.
people and going, just because you want to talk doesn't mean that I want to talk.
Right.
Then I realized, and this is what makes me feel sort of sad because there's people out there experiencing it, going through it right now,
Yeah.
and I don't have the mental capacity to be in that space with them without doing further damage to them,
To you
right?
or to yourself.
Or to myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the state of the world and individuals, and how could you help individuals understand that about those that are in this field?
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about that there are these very rural communities, say in South America or even Australia, where these people have very little, right? In terms of what we think of in America as what you need in order to be happy, they have very little, very simple lives. And yet they are happy.
Yes.
How could that be? Because happiness is not found in a material world. Happiness is found, as I said, in spirit and in doing things that fill you full of love. The Beatles have a song. It says, the love you take is equal to the love you make. And that's the truth. You don't extract it out of a vacuum. You have to make it. You have to make your own love. And we're capable of it. We just aren't taught how to do that. But
Right.
we are capable of making ourselves feel loved, doing things that fill our tanks, that fill us full of energy. And then we have it for other people. But when you have given too much, and for if you're like a people pleaser like me, that can happen because there's a certain charge that you get from giving to people.
Mhm.
You've been programmed. Was programmed that way. But I know that I have gone too far when I start resenting, when I start feeling bitter. That's my sign that I'm running on empty.
Right.
Do you have a similar sign that you find yourself being a little sharp or thinking negative thoughts, that's a good sign.
Well, no, I guess I'm kind of different in that aspect of it, right? Because when I start to feel that way, I get to a point to where I'm very emotionally aware,
Hmm.
right? I'm very emotionally aware. So when I get to that point and I feel there's a distance in me, right? There's a definite distance in me, and that is like my first warning sign.
Hmm.
You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Where it becomes a time for me to disconnect from everything and from everyone. And so, I found ways of reclaiming that. And the gym is my place, right? It's the place where I can go be alone with myself. I can be alone with spirit,
Yep.
and it's a place where I can mentally, physically, and emotionally challenge myself in the gym, right? Because I love to work out, but I love to push myself as well, to the point of exhaustion where I'm just like, you know what? I have nothing else left in this aspect, which leaves me open to be filled back in with the knowledge and the love of the grief that has been gifted to me, right? And so then after that, I'm ready to go. But that is situational. Like when I have multiple people calling me throughout the day,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I don't have a chance to disconnect um, or find that center point within me, because I can tell people all day long, and I either get, oh yeah, I know this, and then it's business and things like that, and sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to do this. And so I do my best not to be short with them
Right.
or things like that. But there's that boundary where I have to say, hey, right now it's probably not the best time,
Right.
right? You know what I'm saying? And when I say that, it's a matter of I need you to respect that from me the same way that you would ask me to respect it of you, right? And so, when I do find that people cannot do that, I will go, you know what? This is where I'm going to end this call. I'll call you when I'm in a better headspace.
Great.
Very respectful.
That's so
Being someone
beautiful.
in grief, you know what I'm saying? Being
Yeah.
someone who works in grief, this is the way I let people know that right now is probably not the best time, right? You know what I'm saying? You cannot ask me to set apart what I'm going through, what I'm feeling, to cater to you,
Right. Right.
right? If you want me to be the 100%, when I come into your space, I need you to allow me to get that 80%. You know what I'm saying? Fill back in, because right now I'm at 20.
Right. Right.
I can't do that for you.
So the gift of grief is often, because the emotions of grief are so intense and they so knock you off your usual routine, you actually start to set boundaries because you have no
Right,
choice.
right. And I think that's where the roles, because being a male, I find that a lot of my female friends, they're looking for someone they're looking for a male that can actually understand what they're going through. And most of them, for the most part, a lot of them know what I do, right? And so I am that go-to person for them,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
But I often have to turn it back around and go, hey, the same way that you're speaking with me, you need to do that with your significant other, right?
Yes.
And I don't want to be a substitute for that, because what's going to happen is that, and I've seen this happen, that I've had to push back on people on this. A lot of my female friends, I had to tell them, what you're doing right now with me is not okay. And they go, what do you mean? You're trying to trauma bond with me.
Mm,
You're being very vulnerable in this moment.
hmm.
And the words that are starting to come out of your mouth is not okay,
Right.
right? Because what you're doing is that you're coming up with excuses to do something that's going to go against what you should be doing.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And I get
But
that it's an emotional thing.
but look at how powerful the desire for to be seen and to
Ah,
be and to
yes,
be loved. It's
yes,
so strong.
yes,
But we mistake it for connecting with this person or that, and we don't realize, because we're not taught, that we actually have the capacity within ourselves to find love. So for you find that you get relief from going to the gym. I like to go in nature. I like to walk among trees, to walk on dirt and feel the nature around me, and that recharges me and energizes me.
Right.
So there are ways in which we can do that. We can reconnect with our center, and
Yes.
then that's how we fill it up. We don't fill it up with food. We fill it up with beauty.
Yes. Now there are some people though, now you know, that will fill it up with food, will fill it up with
Yes, I
all these
know.
different things, right? And that's the beautiful thing about grief, right? You know, everybody has their own significant way of filling up their cups and things
Yeah,
like that. Sometimes it may not look as healthy,
right.
but here's where I tell people. Here's what I tell people. Stop worrying about what they're doing.
Yes.
Stop worrying about what the next person is doing, how they're coping with what they're going with. It has nothing to do with you. And when you have an opinion on what someone else is doing, because it doesn't look like how you would do it, doesn't give you the right to tell them that they're wrong for how they do it.
Oh, so true.
Individual. Let them do
Yeah,
what they need to do.
right.
And you and I have talked about this. Like I'm a firm
Totally.
believer. Look, I would tell a person. I had a guy tell me one time he was watching his friend go battle addiction and everything. He said he couldn't take it no more because his friend was digging his hole, and and so he went in there and took the shovel away from him. I said, no, go back and give that shovel back to him. He goes, but man, I was like, no, you don't understand. What you don't understand, he cannot go any further than what he can go.
Right.
When he gets tired of digging and he hits that rock bottom, he asks for help.
Right.
But if you stop him at this moment, the chances of him going back to finish digging that hole over a period of time is going to go up significantly great, because right now he hasn't learned his lesson. Don't stop his lesson. His lesson is going to be his blessing.
Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well said.
Yeah, let him hit his version of rock bottom. The worst thing that can happen is that, is that they don't learn.
And then they'll get another chance.
Yeah, they get another chance at it, right? Look, I'm a hard-headed individual, Dr. Michelle. I am hard-headed. Did I hit my version of rock bottom? Yes, several times over, right? You know what I'm saying? It was like every time I got up, if you hit me with a styrofoam roll, I'm going to look at you like, that didn't do nothing, right? Now, Now here it goes. I may get hit with a 2x4 and may look at you like, as soon as I heal up, I'm coming back at you again, right? You know what I'm saying? But it's until I hit that proverbial steel pipe across my head, that knocked some sense into me, that I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore, right? I'm hard-headed. I'll tell it, I'm hard-headed. I don't know. Look, I have a high tolerance to pain. So, don't judge me when I start getting left hooks and right hooks by life. I get it, right? But I want people to understand you have individuals like that. You have people like that. And you have to let them hit that version of rock bottom. Because only then will they seek the path of healing.
That's right.
Don't stop their story.
That's right. That's
Don't
right.
stop their story.
That's like the story of the little kid who decides he wants to help the butterfly get out of its cocoon. Did you? Yeah. And he opens up the cocoon, and the butterfly dies because it wasn't able to strengthen its wings by breaking through the cocoon.
Right.
So we need to let our other people break through their cocoons so that they are strong.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because there was a story about the caterpillar and the butterfly, right? You know what I'm saying? That if anybody can put it together, it's a great analogy for life. When you're going through life as this curious caterpillar, you're doing everything that you can, right? You have to avoid the birds. You have to avoid certain animals from eating you and things. So it becomes a place of survival.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying? And then once you get to a certain point, once you get to a certain point and you're ready to change, you're going to go into this little cocoon. That cocoon is going to dissolve the body. That's what the beautiful part. It dissolves the body.
Everything to liquid.
To liquid, right? And over a period of time, now emerges, you know what I'm saying? You're curled up in there until you're ready to stretch your wings. Now you went from this ugly looking caterpillar, probably got hair on it, spikes, whatever, right?
Little spikes sticking out.
Yeah,
little mandibles.
There you go. And now this butterfly comes out with these beautiful wings.
Yeah.
But no one ever talks about the mess.
Yeah.
They just talk about the beauty.
Yeah.
In order for you to become that beautiful version of yourself, you're going to have to go through the mess. You're going to have, your body is going to have to be dissolved. And all the beautiful things that you can turn it into will emerge afterwards. Let people go through it.
Yeah.
Don't change the trajectory. Don't try to stop it. Don't try to save them. And
Right.
things, what you can do is that you can be a good companion as they're going through it. Don't try to do the work for them because it's not yours to do. You got your own set of work that you're going to have to do at some point in your life, right? You know what I'm saying? Just
But
like
that said, Tony,
Yeah.
I am a grief coach, and I do support people in finding their journey, because
right.
oftentimes we're taught the wrong things about how to handle ourselves.
This is true. This is
And
very
for me, it's always a matter of experiential. I'm going to give you something to try. Does it help? Do you get insight from it?
Mhm.
That's what it's about. It isn't that I know the answers. I might not. I might have to help you to explore different things until you find the steps that work for you.
Yes.
But I wondered if you could let me talk a little bit about my system that I use. It's
Yes,
pretty
please.
brief. So the acronym is SERVE. Now, if you were like me and you spend all your time pleasing other people who say serve, but in this case, we let grief serve you. And instead of seeing grief as this sort of enemy or this, black cloud that's descended on us, we're going to take grief and we're going to use it to serve ourselves. So the first letter in serve, S, stands for surrender. In order to get through grief, you have to surrender to the process. You have to surrender to your emotions. If you resist your emotions, you never completely heal yourself. You are just holding it in your body, and it just waits there to either bounce, come out, or it makes you sick. So you need to surrender. So the second one, that's S. E. E is for embrace. And that means both embrace your feelings, but also embrace other people. Because when you lose somebody, you lose a significant bond, and you need other people to help you, because we're social beings. We need to engage and involve ourselves with other people. It's very hard to go through grief by yourself, because your poor body is so activated by it. Your body needs hugs. It needs, somebody to hold it and hug it. So that's engage, embrace. And then the next one is R, for reframe. So part of the process I take people through is to change their story, because the story we have around grief is that it's not okay, that we have to hide it, we have to pretend that we're not grieving, and that maybe the reason we lost somebody was we did something wrong, we made a mistake or whatever. So we want to reframe that. We want the grief to be a process of empowerment, of creating that butterfly. So yeah, at the time that you're going through that cocoon, it feels really awful, but that's the reframing, is to see it as that gateway to your next who you are, who you truly are. And then the next letter is V, which is for vision, which is, how do you vision your life after your loss? We need to create a new version that is who you are after that loss? How did that change you? How did you grow from it? And then finally, the last E is express. Express what you learned. Because we go through these experiences because this is the way in which we learn. This is the way in which we discover who we are. It's almost like our spirit's there all the time, kind of coaching us on the side and throwing these monkey wrenches in our lives so that we will wake up, so that we will learn and get on to the next level. And that's what happened to me. And believe me, you were saying you're hard-headed. It took me many losses before I started to wake up.
Oh my God. Yeah. And you know, the most interesting part about it that I found over a period of time, especially, you know, because as a man, we're not taught these things. And I think you're very similar in that way. No one ever taught us that this was okay to feel this way, or that this was part of life and this is how it was supposed to be, and this, that, and another, you know. Because sometimes when we're sheltered, or when we don't have those individuals come in and, you know, that give us that nurturing, that, you know, the nurturing that we need to grow.
Right.
You know, as they say, you know, you got to water the flower. You got to water the flower. If we don't have that water, that love, that
Right.
commitment to seeing me become the flower that I can become, you know, we tend to try to extract nutrients from other places.
Right. Well, of course, because we're little children or whatever, and we want to survive. So we find something that works for us.
Exactly. And that's where that term survival of the fittest comes in, right? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, hey, you know what? I'm not getting it over here, but I got to go over here with the weeds. And if I go over here with the weeds, I know they like to choke plants out. So what I'm going to have to do is that I'm going to have to figure out how to get up in there, because I see a nice tasty morsel over there. And you know what I'm saying? I'm going to have to go in here. I'm going to have to be the most dominant one up in here, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like that term. There was a statement, you know, even a rose can grow through a crack once in a while. Right?
Yes. Plants are just so great. They're so tenacious. They're so able to break through.
Right, and I think that's what I look at Dr. Michelle and so many amazing people out there that have gone through it. It's like the rose that are you guys are the roses that are growing through the concrete, right? Because it's heavy. This is the analogy, right? Grief is so heavy, but through that little crack, there's this beautiful thing that came up through there and showed the world, like, hey, it is possible to grow even in this.
Yes. In fact, it is the best way to grow. It's only, I mean, you know, you look at the evolution of the species, and it was always like when the species was up against the wall that it had to, you know, develop new processes for survival.
Right.
It's only when we're pushed that the best of us comes out. And I don't want people to think, oh, I had a hard life. Everything in your life builds who you are right now. There are tons of gifts. Yes, there are some things that are maybe you need to change, but there also are tons of gifts that you learn. If you had to fight with a gang, it taught you a lot of strength and a bit of confidence and stuff like that. If you were like me and you had to please people, I got really good at knowing what people wanted and having empathy. I have empathy. I have such strong empathy that I can feel what somebody else is feeling inside of them. I see myself as a body whisperer because I can feel where the blocks are in their body. And that comes from my experience. But then there's somebody else, like my husband. He's got other skills that came from his traumas of his childhood that make him the amazing person he is.
I find that fascinating, because again, I'm always going to be a student of grief, right? No way. you'll never know everything about it, even if you do specialize in one general area, right? You know
Right.
what I'm saying? As we know, grief evolves, right?
Yes.
And it becomes simple yet complex, right? And when you get at understanding one aspect of it, you realize that there's so many different doors that opens up. And then once you start to explore those, you realize that there's more doors on top of there. And I think that's what attracts me to it the most, right? And that's why I tell people, no matter what, in and this is the way that I see it, right? Grief is the one thing in life that connects us as human beings, as people, because it does teach us how to be compassionate towards one another. It teaches us to have empathy towards one another. It teaches us, what I'm saying, to have a better understanding. It teaches us grace. It teaches us forgiveness and patience, right? All of the general things that you need to water who you are, right? All balled up in one, the yin and the yang.
It can, but not everybody goes there. Some
Right.
people
Everybody does.
get thrown off track by it,
Yeah.
and they don't know what to do with it because the emotions are so strong and so overwhelming.
Mm,
And some
yes.
people get depressed, and some people take drugs, and some people uh, do crazy things like try and kill themselves by doing these extreme sports. There are different ways in which people, because they don't know that there actually are ways. And then not every way, like the way that I work with people, is not necessarily for everybody. It's
Right.
for the people who resonate with me, because I
There
have
you
a
go. Yes.
certain experience, but there
Yeah.
might be somebody else who has a different issue that they need support with.
Yes.
But the thing that's amazing about grief is really Mother Nature's mechanism for ensuring that we rebond,
Mm.
because we are social animals. And it put that in there. And we're not the only social animals. Do you know elephants grieve?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And chimpanzees grieve? And birds grieve? Grief is that discomfort that compels us eventually to rebond with other people, because
Mm.
it's that longing for connection.
I love
But
that.
humans are complicated, so they get connected to the person that they lost, and they don't want anybody else, and so they get stuck in the past. So you have to. That's part of the reframing, is that they have to look at things, look at their loss in a different way, not
Mm.
as their life ending. I'll give you an example of a real good reframe. I had a man in one of my grief groups, and he was from the Philippines, and he believed that he only would have one wife, and she had passed away. And every time he would see a radio story or a TV show that related to the disease that she died from, he would have a lot of emotions over it.
Mhm.
And he felt stuck. He felt like he was constantly recycling his grief. I said, what if every time this happened, you were to look at this as the measurement of the love that you have for your wife, that the emotions that you experience are your badge of how dedicated and loving you are to her.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
totally changed him. Suddenly he was no longer beating himself up for grieving. He was seeing this as his badge of courage, of love, that said, I love her. And that's why it hurts. And I hurt because I love her.
Yes.
And he was like out of that grief group in a couple of more weeks, because it was like his beacon. It was his understanding. And finally he could get himself off the hook.
Yeah. And I'm right there with you, right? As being a grief coach that works with men, you know, I see what we try to do. And again, I do things just a little bit different, right? So I'm a patient individual when I'm with these men, because every man, although we may look different, we also speak the same language. And it sounds crazy, But I say this all the time. When men grieve, it's like a foreign love language that no one else speaks. No one else speaks because we're we do things through action, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also do things with a set of rules and things like that. One, we're very observant of a lot of things and we pay attention. We listen to how people talk to one another, right? Over a period of time. Now, we don't all start off with a distrust. That is developed over time. That's the
Right.
first thing people have to understand. That is developed over time. And so that's society. It's an expectation, right? The things that we're taught,
Yeah.
what we are here for, right? And we think that that's the only time, those are the only two things that provide and protect.
Right.
Other than that, no one really cares, right? There's a video out. Whenever you get a chance to check it out. I know I posted it up a couple times, but there's a sad reality. It was a group of men, and a young lady came up there and asked, "Who do you call when you're going through it?" And there's probably about 10 men up there. And it hurt me because this is the reality. They were like, who you called someone? You can call someone? I call no one. I call no one because you'll just use it against me. You'll find a way to use it against me. And this is the and this is where we talk about that complex grief and things like that, right? The understanding, like understanding where Dr. Michelle comes from and understanding where so many other people come from, right? These are the elements that are when you're dealing with a lot of men, saying these are elements that we're overcoming, right? You know what I'm saying? These are the things that we tell ourselves because society has told us, hey, you want your flowers, wait till you're dead.
Yeah.
Women, children, and dogs are honored before you are. They have more value in this home before you do. The impact of having a man in a home is not necessarily felt until after that man is removed from that home.
Oh my gosh. It's true.
This is, and see now the empathy that comes along with that and things like that. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I understand. I was that guy on the receiving end, right? I was told, excuse me. Well, I had to sneeze. It went away.
That was pretty good.
I know it was like no.
It was a silent sneeze. I like that.
No, it wasn't even silent. It came and then it was like, yeah, not right now, right? So it tricked me, Dr. Michelle.
Yeah, that's great.
But I was told. I was told when my son passed away, about 6 months after he passed away, I was in a relationship, and that person told me, it's been 6 months, you should be over it.
Oh, good. Easy for her to say.
Right. Because they had their child, right? You know what I'm saying? That child was grown. So, but what that did teach me, like I say that to say this because there was a lot of things that came along with that. Because it took me to a place to where not only did I have to process what those words meant, but I also had to put myself over a period of time after I dwelled on it and got mad at it and things like that, like, who do you think you are? This, that, and another. I finally came to terms with it was okay. It was okay that they didn't understand what I was going through. Right. Because I would never wish that pain on no one.
Right.
I really wouldn't. But what it did, I now use that phrase, whenever I'm in the atmosphere with men, like the do's and don'ts. So here's what we're not going to do. First off, we're not going to compete. Secondly, we're not going to negate, the next person for your own personal story. We're going to respect them. Right. We're not going to say you should be over it, because if you was over it, you wouldn't be sitting in front of me right now.
Right. Grief is not a competition.
But most people do, right? Think about that. Think about that for a minute, though. Most people in the world, especially in the Western civilization, it becomes a competition because most people will say, "Oh yeah, I've gone through X, Y, and Z," and the next person will come up like, "Yeah, well, I've been through, what I'm saying, A, B, and C, right?"
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and so it does become a competition because, for one, if you look at the damage that has been done to us as human beings over a course of time, from children all the way up until adulthood, right? Because you got to unpack all of that stuff,
yeah,
right? You got to unpack all of those different things. But you have to listen to the way people speak, right?
yeah,
As grief coaches, this is our job. We have to. Okay, I get where you're coming from, and that's when we can intervene and go. That's why we have those tools, right?
that's
That's
right.
why we have. Hey, try this,
Yeah, try
right?
this.
You know what I'm saying? But then we give them a bunch of tools and say, not everything is going to work at this moment, but one of those is going to work when you need it. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? You get to pick and choose which one you
right,
need at that moment as you begin to grow.
right.
And so, when these things do happen, I stop all of that. Nope, that's not what we're gonna do. Nope. And they're like, but no, because I know what you're trying to do, right? You know what I'm saying? You may not understand. Subconsciously, we don't. They don't know that they're doing it.
Oh, of course
It,
not.
it becomes a norm. I want to
Uh,
get your thoughts on that.
a habit, a habit. We learn certain habits. It goes back to that desire to be seen, heard, and loved, and the competition that shows
Right.
up.
Right.
And
Yes.
so we
Yeah.
hear this other person who has a difficult time, and we're like, oh, but wait a minute, it's that father who has to be. It has to be about him, even when his child is receiving an award. Is that person is running on empty and has never learned how to affirm themselves, how to love themselves. They're still seeking it out there in the world and trying to extract it and manipulate it. And so they need to learn a new pattern. It's just
Mm.
a habit. In the end, it's just a habit. And it's just been so ingrained they don't even realize they're doing it. But I
Mm.
understand because I had plenty of those habits myself.
Right. Right. But as we were talking, as we were talking about that, a phrase came to mind, right? And it may be something that I may use going forward, but it's unnecessary emotions, right? And what I mean by that, let me break that down just real quick. When those individuals that are seeking attention like that, they tend to create an environment to where they can put those emotions out there, which is very unnecessary, right? You know what I'm saying? Attention seeking. And
Right.
so, and that's what I mean by unnecessary emotions or unintentional emotions. Or depending on how you look at it, it can be intentional emotions. Because when you find someone, and please let me know what you think about this. I'm just talking at this moment. When when a person is seeking attention, their emotions become intentional to the situation, right? You know what I'm saying? I know that if I act very dramatic in this situation, I'm going to get this attention from this sympathy from people. You know what I'm saying? This pity from people,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes,
You know what I'm saying?
yes.
Or
I
or
totally.
or if they're in a situation to where you know what I'm saying, if tensions are high and people are starting to argue and things, and it may not even have nothing to do with them, but the attention is over here, and they have to who's doing, and they have to make it more aggressive, more dramatic towards them. So intentional emotions, right? You know what I'm saying? What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
Well, I think
Fascinating.
that the original cause of it is that need to feel loved, recognized, appreciated, and approved, and the deficit is so huge. The hole inside, the wound that happened in childhood, is so great that they've developed this habit, and it's really hard to break the habit of
Mhm.
seeking the love out there because for children, what they really need is unconditional love. But most of us don't get unconditional love because our parents probably didn't get love when they were children. So we develop these patterns, these habits, and until we start to recognize them, we're never going to change them, because as long as they work, we keep on doing it. And if somebody blows up at us, we might not change because we don't understand why we're doing these things. We don't have that self-reflection and awareness.
Right.
It takes awareness to start to change, and awareness is just the first step. Then you actually have to start to recognize when it is that habit kicks in, and then you have to replace the habit with a new habit.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of focus. That's why you want to coach somebody who's going to say, oh, there, you're doing it again. Because if you have to wait for yourself to recognize it, you might not see it. You need somebody else, and you want somebody who's going to be compassionate with you. You don't want to be shamed, because then, that you're not going to work well with shame, because it's not your fault. You developed a pattern to keep you alive when you were a child. And you keep that pattern until you need to change it.
I like that. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about those who have narcissistic tendencies as well, right? You know what I'm saying? And how careful, because that's a very thin line, right? You know what I'm saying? And I think in a lot of ways you have to be very sharp with your discernment in those situations, right? Because if you have been someone who's been in a narcissistic relationship, you know what I'm saying, or had narcissistic siblings or friends or parents and things like that, they pretty much blur the lines a lot, right? You know what I'm saying? Because everything that we're talking, and again, when I say this, I'm speaking from a place of being in a narcissistic abusive relationship, right? And as you were talking, I was like, man, that really almost describes the narcissist.
It does. But here's the thing. You who are in that relationship do not have the skills to help them change. Plus, they need to want to change.
Right. Yes.
So yeah, for your sake, you may have to leave that relationship, because that's only going to trash you.
Yeah. And I think it's really hard for people to leave those relationships, because if you've been living your life in certain conditions, it seems pretty much normal.
Yes. Well, especially if you were brought up in a narcissistic family to begin with, it feels like home.
Right. It's really hard to distinguish, the healthy from the non-healthy, right? Because and I've seen this happen, a couple times. And I just sat back and I said something before it even happened, like, this is probably not the road that you want to go down, because this is not going to flat out say what was going on, for the simple fact of, when you're dealing with people and emotions, it can turn around on you. But, I used to give subtle warnings, like, probably not the best thing you want to do. You know what I'm saying? For yourself. Oh, no, this, that, another. Prime example, long time ago, I had a friend, really good friend of mine. Her boyfriend at that time, or husband at that time, was very abusive. Very abusive, physically, verbally, mentally abusive. Like, he used to beat her. And, being the guy that I was, I used to always tell him, don't ever put your hands on her around me. I'm going to do something to you. She would get mad at me. Oh, no, he's just upset and this, that, and another. And I'm watching him going, I don't understand this. I don't understand this. Well, eventually he went to jail. Right. So now she has an escape.
Right.
She can get away. File for divorce. She can get away. And so she did. She did exactly that. And you talk about, I was so happy for her.
Yeah.
Very briefly.
Right.
Because what ended up happening is that she was doing really well, and she meets another guy that was just like the one that went.
Just like the one before. Yeah, that's right. Because she needs to do the emotional healing.
Right, yes.
Because she feels that she deserves that, and she's attracted to that. And she doesn't have the skills or the tools to help her break out of that herself. And so she's just going to keep on going back. That's why, when I talk about complex grief, you really want to be working on these habits early, because eventually something's going to happen and you're going to have to. But if you could do it early and skip the death, skip the grief, and do it earlier, that would be better, because it's impacting you all throughout. That feeling of not feeling worthwhile or worthy, and you tend to attract somebody who's going to confirm that for you, and then you feel bad and you feel not good enough, and they mistreat you and you feel like you deserve it, and you get caught in that paradigm, you get caught in that dynamic, and you don't have the tools to get out. So if you find that you're running into that, you might want to have a conversation with me and see if I might be able to help you out of that pattern, because I understand it.
See, and I love that. That's why I love having these conversations, because you teach me so much, and we've unpacked so many different things, and it just leads to surrounding yourself with the right people that have the skills and the knowledge and the awareness. And you have an amazing system, right? And unpacking all of that, I was like, yeah, that's the key to it right there. Dr. Michelle got this thing down packed, man. That is freaking amazing, right? And for everyone, and as we begin to wrap this up, and things like that, first and foremost, I want to say, for everyone who's been tuning in on IG, what I'm saying, and Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Rumble, Twitter, Twitch, you guys, I see you guys up there, what I'm saying. Thank you guys for tuning in, and just sitting back and enjoying the conversations that we're having, with Dr. Michelle. And hopefully you guys got a lot from that, right? We've unpacked a lot of things, a lot of jewels. If you just now tuned in, go back and check out the full episode, right? You guys are going to get a lot about this, a lot of gems that Dr. Michelle was dropping, and now with that being said, Dr. Michelle, how can people find you?
I have a free gift. If you are wondering whether or not you have complex grief, if there are things in your childhood that have created patterns that are creating discomfort and stealing happiness out of your life, you might want to do my complex grief checklist. It's a list of 10 questions, and you fill it out, and then I give you a grief assessment in return. And that's a way to start and find out more about the work that I do. And there's also an opportunity to have a conversation with me if you want to do that as well. So it's complexgriefchecklist.com. It's all, all the three words squished together, and .com, complexgriefchecklist.com.
I love that. And you also have some other stuff out too, right? A book or something. You got a book too, right?
Yes, I do have a book. I'm in 3 different anthologies, and one is called Breaking Barriers, and one of them is called Step Into Your Brilliance, and that's probably got the best story of my childhood and how what happened to me that held me back from being a full person, that made me feel like I was not good enough. The Breaking Barriers has real good tools and explanations for how you can work with grief. And in addition, I have my 3-part film series, which you can see the trailers on my website, which is secretsoflifeanddeath.com.
Yes.
And that's the name of the series too, Secrets of Life and Death.
Guys, go check that out. Please go check that out. You're on social media as well, right? You're on Facebook.
Yes, so I'm on Facebook, yes, and I'm on LinkedIn. And I realize that I need to get on Instagram, but I haven't quite. I'm used to working on a big computer, and somehow working on that cell phone is a little tricky for me.
The only thing you got to do is you just got to remember your passcode. Then you can always go to the big computer, though. You know what I'm saying? But you got to get it up there, though. Definitely got to get it up there. People, go and connect with her, please. Please go and connect with her.
Thank you.
And if you love these conversations, what I'm saying, please do me a favor. subscribe to the YouTube channel. Maybe these conversations may not be for you, right? Maybe you know somebody who can benefit from them. Do me a favor, share these conversations with them. Everybody that I speak with, their information is there for you to reach out to. Go get your free gift. Have a conversation. Find out what support is out there, resources. These people are out here doing amazing things. Like I said, not only do they talk the talk, but they've walked the walk. They've gone through the things that you're going through. They have the experience, they have the knowledge, they have the awareness for you, right? And you guys already know they're going to treat you right. They're going to treat you right. So please reach out to them. I implore you. And now, one last question for you, Dr. Michelle. One last question.
All right.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Well, I have a superpower. And my superpower is that I can feel what people are feeling inside of themselves. If I connect with them and I focus on them, I can feel where the blocks are in their body. So I sometimes call myself a body listener or whisperer, body whisperer. And so when I work with somebody, because the first tool that I use is to help people allow their emotions. Only a lot of people don't know how to allow their emotions because they, like me, had crushed them for so long that allowing it to surface and to release is a big, it's a learning curve. So I help them to learn how to do that. I give them the tools to discover the emotions in their body and release them. And I help because I can actually feel where the blocks are. I know where the blocks are.
Very in tune. Very, very in tune. With that being said, Dr. Michelle, we're going to wrap this up for everyone. Thank you guys again for tuning in. And as we shut this one out, trust me, you never know that you need it until you need it, right? You know what I'm saying? So go and reach out to Dr. Michelle, and get some work done on you, right? And let's help navigate each other to our next destination and heal, because that's important. That is definitely important. And so, with that being said, guys, this is going to close out this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. Thank my guest, Dr. Michelle, for this amazing conversation, for being here and being my guest. You guys are going to see a lot more of her as well, because we're going to be unpacking so many other things as well as we begin to move. So, what I'm saying, guys, this is our goal of bringing you guys daily episodes and things like that. Help us reach our goal, right? Help us reach our goal. And we're going to keep doing it. With that being said, guys, love you. Thank you for your support. We're going to see you guys in the next one, and enjoy your day. And don't forget to tell the people in your life that you love them, because tomorrow's not promised, right? So make sure that make sure that they know that you care. Love you. You guys have a great, amazing day.